On this episode of the Airport Economist, cranking up car sales in Latin America. The two Victorian blokes who spotted a gap in the market and accelerated ahead. Plus the world-first Australian technology helping Mexico manage through the drought. Getting hired has never been easier. The online jobs board transforming the way companies do business. And want to mix business with pleasure? You've come to the right place. Mexico is the epicentre of Aztec arts and culture. Welcome to Mexico City. I'm Tim Harcourt, the Airport Economist. I'm going to show you around this ancient Aztec nation that boasts a large modern economy straddling North America, Latin America and the Pacific. Mexico is often overshadowed by its large neighbour, the USA. It's also often compared to another Latin American industrial giant, Brazil. But Mexico is a significant economy in its own right, building up trade ties to Asia and Europe, as well as within the American hemisphere. So let's take a closer look behind the headlines to see how Mexico is situated in the Asia-Pacific region. Mexico is over 1.9 million square miles in area, from the US border in the north to the edge of Guatemala in the south. It borders the Pacific Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. It's heavily populated with 123 million people. It's a constant battle to fight poverty even in times of impressive economic growth. Greater Mexico City has a population over 21 million people, making it one of the world's largest urban centres. Mexico's GDP is $1.2 trillion US. Its GDP per capita is $9,700, which means it's slightly below that of Brazil. Inflation is a moderate 4.4% and unemployment is 3.5% of the labour force, but with a large informal sector. Mexico is a member of the G20, the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Pacific Alliance. Its major export partners are the United States, Canada and Germany. It imports mainly from the United States, China and Japan. Mexico and Australia rub shoulders on the world stage in the G20, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, in APEC, as well as having a significant bilateral relationship. As a result, Australia has a busy embassy here in Mexico City. I spoke with Australian Ambassador David Engel. To the outsider, Mexico often gets overrun by news north of the border. But it's a very significant nation in its own right, isn't it?
Well, it's already the 15th largest economy in the world. It's projected to be the 10th largest economy in the world by about 2030. It's one of the world's most important producers of manufactured items. It's the world's largest producer of TVs. It's the world's largest exporter of refrigerators. I think it's the fourth largest exporter of autos. It manufactures and exports 2/3 of all of the manufactured items across all of Latin America alone. By any standards, Mexico is a very serious international player and a very serious economy.
So is Mexico a North American country, a Latin American country or Pacific country?
It certainly defines itself as both a Latin American country and a North American country, and increasingly it's defining itself as a Pacific country. It's starting to define itself within the context of the Asia-Pacific to a greater extent than historically it has. But it is a unique Latin American country by virtue of its geography, but also by virtue of so many of its economic fundamentals.
How does membership of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, APEC, and the Pacific Alliance propel Mexico on the global stage?
The most important theme at the moment in Mexico is, much like ourselves, a search for diversification in trading partners. The CPTPP has provided Mexico with arguably its most important opportunity to seek new, important trading partners and to move away from its heavy reliance upon the United States. It exports about 80% of its manufactures and exports generally to the US market, and it's concerned about that. Australia is one of the options that Mexico now has. And as an embassy, we're working very hard to take advantage of all of that.
So why is Mexico the place to do business for Australians now?
If you're in Mexico, you have connections to numerous other markets. But above all, you have access to the largest single economic grouping in the continent, and one of the largest in the world. Proximity to the United States is an extremely attractive opportunity for Australian businesses. But at the same time, you've got a growing middle class in a nation with a very, very significant population and a very young demographic. So whether you're looking to invest or whether you're looking to export, Mexico offers numerous opportunities.
Is there anything that has surprised you about Mexico?
I don't think you fully appreciate what kind of country, how rich and diverse and sophisticated the country of Mexico is until you've spent some time here. And I must say, it's a beautiful place.
Muchas gracias, Ambassador.
De nada, con mucho gusto.
Coming up, Life in the Fast Lane, the two Aussie blokes transforming the online car sales market. The state of Victoria has launched a Latin American trade and investment strategy with Mexico at its forefront. It's no coincidence given that both Victoria and Mexico have large manufacturing sectors. Let's find out more from Pablo Schatz, Victoria's Trade and Investment Director for Latin America. The United States of Mexico is a big place. So does Victoria have a state or regional focus, or is it mainly determined by industry?
Well, we work with particular companies that have a specific interest in different sectors, and that we use that to drive our engagement with the market. We always advise companies that they need to engage with different key partners on the ground. So from the Victorian government, what we can do is we can help them identify and reach out to these partners. Always the government badge takes you a long way in Latin America, and Mexico is no exception. Be it at the federal level, be it at the state level, we are keen to support Victorian companies in their engagement. And we also rely on partners as well, which are chambers of commerce, mining clusters, Austrade, and any other partner that we can work together in order to tackle opportunities in Mexico.
So Victoria is the heartland of manufacturing in Australia, and Mexico really is the heartland of manufacturing for Latin America. Is that why the links are so strong?
That's for sure, Tim. We believe that there are a lot of opportunities for tackling into the global supply chains. Mexico is a hub for advanced manufacturing, be it the automotive sector, be it aerospace, medical devices, and Victoria has its own strength on that front as well. So there are a lot of opportunities having both Mexican companies coming into Victoria to tackle these opportunities, and also for Victorian companies in the automotive sector, in the medical devices space, for example, to get into Mexico, and from Mexico as well, access the North American markets and other markets as well.
So the Trans-Pacific Partnership excludes the United States, but Mexico and Australia are members. Will that bring good opportunities for Victoria?
Absolutely. I think the relationship between Mexico and Australia is doomed to be successful and to double in size over the next decade or so. Current trends, both in the trade agreement space and also geopolitical trends, are prompting that to happen.
What tips would you give Australian companies going to Mexico?
Mexico is a relationship-driven economy, in the sense that you need to be there, you need to be present, you need to develop those relationships, and you need to rely on relationships in order to access the clients and the partners that you need. And it's always very important to be able to identify key partners, to do a proper due diligence in order to minimize any risks, and work with those partners to tackle the opportunities that the market provides. Another tip that I could give to companies interested in Mexico is that you need to know what you're looking for. Mexico is huge. There are very diverse economic opportunities are very, very big, but you need to know exactly what's your value proposition, what's your target industry, and go and narrow down the scope of your activities. And that way you'll be more targeted, more focused, and you will reach much better results.
A little later, see how an Australian company is helping Mexico deal with its big dry. Have you ever bought a used car? Well, it's big business here in Latin America, and two Aussie blokes are driving it. Tim Hanley and Gareth Bannon noticed a wide gap in the auto classified space and really went for it. That was 5 years ago, and now LATAM Autos operates in 6 countries across the continent. Let's find out the secret to their success. So what do you actually do? What's your business model?
So effectively, we've got 2 main lines of business. The main traditional line is classifieds. So that you'll know that from carsales.com or realestate.rea group or Seek. It's effectively, car dealers or individuals like you and me We put a listing on the website. We pay a certain amount of dollars, and that car gets sold. It's like a B2C or a C2C model. The other part of our business is what we call cross-sell products. That's effectively finance, insurance, GPS, and mechanical guarantee. And so that really nails the growth of the business. And in Mexico, that's the majority of the revenue.
So how does Mexico compare to other countries in Latin America in terms of doing business?
Business-wise, we found it to be very, very welcoming. Very, I'd say, easy wouldn't be the word, but I'd say a lot more business-friendly than other countries. You know, countries like Argentina and Brazil, as much as I love them personally, I think to do business there, and having done business there and continuing to have businesses there, they are very much more difficult, much more bureaucratic. Mexico, I don't know if it's because it's 100% to do with being part of NAFTA or being so close to the US. I think that's a big part of it. There's a large US influence here. There's a lot of, I think, cross-pollination between Mexico and the US.
So as an Australian company, how important is it to have Latin Americans in your leadership team?
It's an interesting one because we kind of straddle both Australia and Latin America in a little bit of a lopsided way. So being on the ASX, we need strong Australian relationships and people that can relate to board of directors and, you know, kind of institutional investors and people of that nature. Operationally speaking, in Latin America, I'd say it's critical that your senior management team is Latino. And it's not just Latino. You know, it's because there's Latin America, but you've got to remember there's a whole bunch of different cultures and nuances within Latin America. So, for example, putting an Argentinian country manager in Brazil might be a challenge. Nothing against those two countries, but there are cultural differences. Of our business, what I can say from my experience is that, as I said, we have 200 employees and I'm the only foreigner living in Latin America. So for us, it's critical.
Still to come, Australian company Seek sets its sights on Mexico. So let's find out how easy it is to tap into the innovation sector here in Latin America. Rubicon Water is an Australian business that's done just that. It improves the management of water in open canals, a necessity in certain parts of Mexico. So let's catch up with a senior representative to see how they're changing Mexico's approach to agriculture. So what solutions does Rubicon provide?
We are about the efficient delivery of water from a point of storage in a dam through to a root zone of a crop. We do that in sort of two stages. In getting the water to the farm gate efficiently via software to manage the demand side of water and the control side, and then automation hardware in the canals and river systems to match that, to get the water to the farm gate efficiently. And then on farm, we have a series of ag tech applications and apps which really allow the farmer to use the best of agronomy and science to work out when the water's needed, knowing that our technology will get the water to the crop.
So water management is a big issue in Australia. What about Mexico?
It's pretty similar, actually. Particularly the north of Mexico is very dry, and the climate's very similar to Australia, to the Murray-Darling Basin. And the parallels, really continue there for us when we first looked at the Mexican market. Agriculture in a lot of those irrigation districts in Sonora and Sinaloa states are big farms, commercial farms, and a lot of the canal infrastructure is laid out very much like the Murray-Darling Basin.
Is Australian expertise in water management well respected in Mexico?
It is. Australia, with the millennium drought that happened throughout the early 2000s, made a massive investment in improving the irrigation infrastructure in the Murray-Darling Basin, and Rubicon was centre of that. Our technology has really been the enabling technology through most of those water reforms. Globally, in the irrigation industry, Australia's been the canary in the coal mine. So to that extent, Mexico, Chile, a lot of the Latin American companies have, when they're investigating what to do with that infrastructure, Australia's usually on their agenda to get here to see what we've done.
And what advice would you have for other Australian companies looking to go into Mexico?
Get your contacts. Don't think it's going to be easy, because it's you have to be prepared to invest. You can have I suppose we were naive at that, 10, 15 years ago when we were starting out on this journey, thought we had a great product, well demonstrated in Australia. The world will come to us. In our experience around the world, nothing has happened till we've invested, and there's, several years of loss-leading investment in all these markets to be able to build up to a scale where you can start to generate, profits and revenues. And that takes, you've got to be prepared to go on that journey.
With almost 55 million people in the formal labour market here in Mexico, looking for a job is serious business. OCCMundial is an online jobs board matching applicants with employers. It was recently bought by Australian company Seek Limited as part of an aggressive overseas expansion plan. So let's see how Seek's successful blueprint at home is being translated here.
OCCMundial, our job is to help people find the job of their dreams, to find better opportunities. And so what we do is we connect job seekers with companies that are offering those opportunities. We do that via our platform, OCC.com. And our job is to make that as easy to use so that anybody can come in, look for jobs. We have over 100,000 different job ads at any given moment on the platform.
So how did the company begin?
So OCC began about 22 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So our founder, Jose Manuel, he sold part of the name OCC to Monster actually back in the late 90s. The opportunity was so big in the States. As we all remember, Monster was the king of the jobs marketplace in the States in the late 90s. He then took that concept and replicated it in Mexico a few years later.
Even though OCC is owned by an Australian company, does it still operate the Mexican way?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So this is, by and large, a Mexican company. It's been a fantastic opportunity and change for OCC to work more closely with Seek. We do that in a number of ways, both as far as the company strategy. We now have a much more global perspective of what's happening all around the world. As you know, Seek is invested in several other countries, and several other leading brands are now part of the Seek group. And so we have the great benefit of now working together with those other brands and together forming really what's going to be the strategy of jobs for the future. Now, that said, OCC is a Mexican company. Everybody here, myself including, is Mexican. We want to help Mexicans, find the best jobs. We want to help companies be successful, and that really drives what we do every single day.
So Australian-owned, but with a Mexican flavour.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how has artificial intelligence transformed the business?
Yeah, artificial intelligence, it's transforming many businesses, ours included. Really, the way in which we use artificial intelligence is to take the work out of finding opportunities. You may not be necessarily looking. Instead, it could be that AI is always looking for you.
There's a bit of a debate that AI costs jobs, but you're saying it makes the labour market more efficient, so it might actually create jobs.
In our case, I would say artificial intelligence depends on people building those artificial intelligence algorithms. I think it's a part of our team that's actually grown. It hasn't shrunk, and if anything, it just creates more work for the rest of us. So there's plenty of work to go around.
Still to come, how do you actually get here? Via LA, or is there an easier way? In today's world of international business, it's important to protect your intellectual property, whether you're in Asia, Europe, or here in the Americas. To get advice on how to best safeguard your company, I spoke with IP Australia. So does protecting my IP in Australia give me any protection overseas?
It's a great question. So unfortunately it doesn't. So every office and every country has their own jurisdiction, which means that they have their own legal system regulations. And what that means is when you protect in one country, that's the country you get protection for.
So why is it important to plan your market entry strategy?
So the market entry strategy is the best thing you can do when you're looking to expand internationally. The key thing to remember is you need to understand the market that you're moving into, and you need to plan it beforehand. Things like understanding the culture, the language, the actual intellectual property system that they have, because each one is different. Every country has their own.
If a business is looking for a local partner, Should they draw up a contract like a non-disclosure agreement?
It depends in what regard you're looking to move overseas and looking for that local partner, but contracts are always a good recommendation. The key thing to remember with contracts though is it's important to do the contract in the way that it's actually enforceable in that country. So there wouldn't be a lot of point in taking an Australian contract to, say, Mexico and trying to enforce it there. You need it to be the same as they would use and enforce in their court system.
But is it culturally important not to sort of whip out a contract straight away?
I think that's a big risk, to be honest. So when you're meeting somebody and you're shaking hands, you're doing the nice etiquette niceties, the last thing you want to do is start shoving a non-disclosure agreement in their face. But it is a really important part of business too. So you need to be mindful that before you start talking key details of the manufacturing process or the things that you're looking to expand overseas, you want to have that conversation.
So Mexico is famous for its tequila. Does that cause any IP issues?
Look, it does. So tequila is actually a city in Mexico, and as most Australians would know, a very popular drink. I guess the IP issue that's related to that is the name from the city, because that's where it originated, has become so popular that it's synonymous with, the quality and the attributes of the drink tequila. So what happens in those sorts of cases is the country of origin will go to and aim to protect that geographical indication, to say it has to originate from here because it has to have those attributes that make it tequila. So in Australia at the moment we don't have what's known as a formal geographical indication registration system, but we do offer certification trademarks, and that's how tequila could be protected in Australia.
So what can IP Australia do to help?
We have a lot of information on our website, and the Austrade websites as well have country profiles, so you can actually have a look and get to know a bit of the culture as well.
We've established that Mexico is a North American, Latin American and a Pacific nation. But how do you actually get here? Let's ask the people in the know at LATAM Airlines. So what's the best way to get from Australia to Mexico?
You can choose where you want to go from Australia to Mexico via the States, or you can definitely go from South America as well. We have services from Santiago to Mexico and from Lima to Mexico as well.
So you can go to Mexico via the United States, or you can go to Santiago. What's the difference time-wise?
It's very similar. The difference in time between going to Mexico via South America or via North America.
Are there any security concerns?
All of the concerns have to do with being a very big city, particularly Mexico City, but in the rest of Mexico, everything is pretty, normal.
What sort of currency should I take with me when I'm travelling around Latin America?
You can use whatever you use here at home. They all work in South America very well.
So what's a must-see and do in Mexico if you've got the time?
Mexico it's a huge and big city. There's so many things to see. I would say museums are particularly extraordinary, and everything related to their culture, like food and paintings of Diego Rivera or Frida Kahlo, or finally whatever you decide to do. Mexico in particular is one of my favorite countries.
Mexico City is a highly cultured place with lots of art and museums and plenty of entertainment options should you have some downtime on your business trip. But this is also a massive place and getting around can be challenging. I spoke with the General Manager of the Hyatt Regency on how to navigate sprawling Mexico City. So when doing business in Mexico, is it lunch, is it dinner?
It is. As a matter of fact, you also have a breakfast. But in business, you have to understand one thing is that if you do a lunch, first of all, the lunch is not at noon and 1. It will start at 3. And then we'll end up to maybe 6 or 7. So doing lunches in a Mexican business environment sometimes can take a long time. So you have to ensure that you are prepared and that your agenda is scheduled accordingly.
So as a foreigner, how much Spanish is expected here?
I think, like in many countries and many cultures, if you speak a little, it will make you more welcome, obviously, making the effort to integrate yourself in the local culture and the community. I think in Mexico City, and especially in this area of the center of Polanco, I mean, people do speak a bit of English or a bit more, rightly because there's many foreigners coming to this part of town. If you go a bit outside of the main city, Mexico, I mean, you need a bit of more of a Spanish because they don't speak necessarily English, so that would be recommendable.
So how do you get around town or from the airport? Is it Uber, taxi, public transport, hotel car?
I think you named them all. I think we recommend maybe for our foreigners to take a hotel car or a taxi that the hotel knows, so that you're sure that they're not coming from anywhere in the street. So that's basic measure of security to ensure your trip back and forth goes well. But usually ask your hotel where you're staying, and they get you the safest car to get to the airport.
So you've worked all around the world with the Hyde. What's been the biggest surprise to you about Mexico City?
I think I was surprised by the quality of the food and the variety of the food. I mean, Mexican gastronomy is renowned in the world.
Are there any things you shouldn't do or say in Mexico?
Well, I think maybe in many countries, I mean, if you don't know with whom you are, you don't know so well, don't talk about religion, don't talk too much about politics, and talk well about the country.
Mexico is a proud, highly cultured nation and a significant economy in its own right. They proudly call themselves the United States of Mexico to show that they too are a federation. And they want to be defined more on their own terms and not on terms of their large neighbour and the related security and migration issues. So what do we learn from our visit to Mexico? Learn some Spanish. Although most Mexican business people are fluent in English, it will be appreciated. There are security issues, so work closely with your representative embassy and commercial diplomats. Mexico is making a pivot to Asia and the Pacific, so talk up those ties, especially the Pacific Alliance. If you are in Mexico City, enjoy the rich Aztec art and culture in the museums. It will be appreciated by hosts and business partners. And not too many Speedy Gonzalez gags or stereotypes about siestas and sombreros until you know your business partners well. But a big yes to bringing a bottle of tequila to a party. Well, that's it for this Mexico edition of the Airport Economist. See you on our next business adventure together somewhere around this great globe. I'm Tim Harcourt, and I'm the Airport Economist. Welcome to Bogota, capital of Colombia.
Oh, it's an amazing country. I mean, it's one of the most mega diverse countries in the world.
Colombia sees Australia as a wonderful and a big opportunity.
See you on our next business adventure together somewhere around the great globe.